You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Or maybe I should say, this is Soundside. Johnny Gilbert is not easy to imitate. It's an opening theme and a theme song so iconic, I probably don't need to tell you I'm trying to riff on Jeopardy right now. For over 60 years, the quiz game show has been a beloved part of people's lives. And Washington native Ken Jennings says growing up, the show sparked his love of trivia. It's a passion that led him to a 74-game win streak in 2004 and a victory at the greatest of all time tournament, so we can officially call him the GOAT. Eventually, he even won the title of host of Jeopardy. Meanwhile, he's translated his trivia expertise into his own game. It's called Kennections. It's a weekly puzzle that he writes for Mental Floss. And while you can no longer get a home game of Jeopardy, you can bring home Kennections in Jennings' latest book, The Complete Kennections, 5,000 questions and 1,000 puzzles. And I got to say, we are having so much fun on the team playing Kennections since we got this book. So, Ken Jennings, welcome to the studio. And also, thank you for the book. It's been a lot of fun.
I'm delighted to be back at KUOW, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Trivia, to me, is very public radio coded. So
there's a Venn diagram, and
that's right. It's
you
a circle.
Right there.
It's a circle. I feel like this book has found its home.
Okay, I want to get more to the book and kind of the history of it, how it came together. But first of all, I would be remiss because I'm a journalist, and you're in the headlines right now because
that's not what anybody wants to hear
No,
today.
Nobody usually does want to hear this, but you are the latest winner of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Yes. What? I mean, you were...
that was an exciting moment.
Right. So this was a celebrity setup, like a blind date kind of thing. I'm assuming between you and Matt Damon, you were paired up and you won $1 million for water.org. We're just going to play a little clip.
It is so awesome having Ken Jennings as your partner in a trivia game. I can't even tell you.
Everybody but Jimmy Kimmel. Do we love Matt Damon or what? Right.
So it seemed like Damon was implying that you were the ringer there. Were you the ringer?
Well, that was, I think, the intention, but it's no fun to be the ringer, Libby. Like, there's a lot of pressure to being the ringer.
Sure.
Nobody thinks about the ringer's feelings. I was coming off stage at this cancer fundraiser, and Jimmy Kimmel was hosting it, and he said, hey, I had a funny idea. What if we could get like a real A-lister to do Celebrity Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Because we tell them you could be their partner. Like, what if we could just get like Jen Aniston or something? He's just naming a celebrity he knows or goes on vacation with or whatever. And I'm like, sure, Jimmy. And what I'm thinking is, that's a lot of pressure. You know, that's $1 million for charity. And some poor celebrity is signing up thinking, oh, this is easy. Ken will just know all this stuff.
Ride the coattails.
But what if I don't? Millionaire's tough.
And so, I mean, just to be clear, it's still a hard game. I mean, these questions were difficult. Like the final question for listeners who didn't watch the episode yet, which of these words is used to describe one of the most beautiful auditory effects on Earth, the sound made by the leaves of trees when wind blows through them? What the hell? There's a sound, like named sound?
Apparently there's a word for the sound of a wind in the trees.
And you guys knew it.
Even before I saw a thing I like to do is to try to make a guess before the choices appear, because then you can kind of get your true cognitive idea before you get swayed by seeing the choices, right? And in this case, I was like, I think there's like an onomata poetic word that sounds like wind in the trees, like susurration or something. And that was in the back of my mind. And when one of the words appeared and it was like very similar to that, susurrus, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to win $1 million for Matt Damon's water.org charity. Which
and you did.
We did. Confetti came out of the sky.
That's fun. Are you thinking we should do confetti in Jeopardy now? I
have been on a lot of game shows and I have never had confetti, and it's a pretty good vibe.
It's good.
Except for the people who have to clean it up after, because like a couple other comedians were about to come out and play, but they had to pause to clean up all the confetti.
I was going to ask about the strategy, like between Jeopardy and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It sounds like you did think strategy, like the idea of coming up with answers on your own before seeing and being influenced by the choices. Were there other strategic things that maybe were different from Jeopardy, or can you compare those games and winning those games?
Millionaire's hard because unlike Jeopardy, you have to swing at every pitch. On Jeopardy, if you don't know 10 questions in a row, you might be fine. You might still win. You know, you can pick your spots. Millionaire, if you don't answer every single question, you are out. They send you home. It's they're mean. Kimmel's mean.
Yeah, but you can call people and stuff.
That's
there's
it.
the lifelines.
You've got all the lifelines. And so there's a lot of strategy into when and how you use those. Like we used our Ask the Audience lifeline, but Matt and I had been talking backstage and we thought a smart move is like not to reveal what you're thinking until you ask the audience. Because then they're unaffected by what you've just been saying and you're going to get better data, right?
Yes.
So we had a guess and we polled the audience and they agreed with our guess and then we felt very good. So I feel like our strategy worked out.
The one last question before we move on and talk about the book is there's a famous feud going on between Matt Damon and Jimmy Kimmel. And I just felt for you. My heart went out to you because you were right in the middle of it.
Dragged into the middle of
This
that.
was a tough thing to see on national television. The two of them just fighting, bickering, you mediating. I mean,
Right.
having seen it up close, do you feel like there is a chance for peace between the two of them at any time in the future?
I'm glad I was not raised in an unhappy home because I feel like it really would have been too traumatic to have
Sure.
to have mommy and daddy fighting
Yeah.
like that.
It was tough.
That's one of my favorite late night bits. Is it now like in its third decade?
It's
maybe
legendary at this point. Yeah.
And I guess I knew that was the joke, that Jimmy was going to be annoyed that Matt was there, but I didn't know that was going to be the joke. Like that there was going to be 40 minutes of like the Comedy Central roast of Matt Damon while we're trying to win $1 million.
Jimmy at one point referred to Matt Damon as a yak.
Well, he had the beard. He's doing that Christopher Nolan Odyssey movie.
Yeah.
So he comes in with this, which he was filming next door. So he comes in with this enormous beard. And I have to say, I did a double take. I was not expecting Odysseus.
Yeah. It was great. I mean, you navigated it wonderfully. And at a certain point, there was even like a question of whether you would use Jimmy as the lifeline, which he answered a difficult question.
It was Seattle trivia.
Yeah, it was.
It was about Bill Nye winning a Steve Martin lookalike contest, which I watched plenty of Bill Nye on Almost
I had
Live
no idea.
back
I
in the
grew up
day.
here. I didn't know.
I did not remember
Yeah.
that. But Jimmy had been a radio personality here at exactly the right time to have known that story. And he saved our bacon. So you could kind of see I think in wrestling they call it kayfabe,
Yep.
like the pretense of the feud. You could see it slipping away because Jimmy was like, I'm actually going to help these guys out and they're going to win even though it ruins the feud.
Yeah, Jimmy was willing to help people get clean water with water.org, the charity
Jimmy
that you won
loves
for.
the Global South so much that he loves it more than he hates Matt Damon, which is refreshing.
It's inspiring. So let's talk about the compilation of trivia questions that you have here. It's a game that some people might be familiar with if they, like myself, get Parade or used to get Parade at their house and in a newspaper that was delivered to your home.
Should we explain that to people?
Oh, God, do we? It's NPR. I mean, people probably know what Parade
They remember
is.
Parade magazine.
Yeah, at this point. But yes, we are all showing our age by talking about Parade magazine. But this is a game that started in Parade, right?
That's how long I've been doing this.
Yeah. So before we get to how the game works and why I think it's really fun, can you just tell me kind of the history of how it got into book form?
Well, all Parade had, they called me like almost 15 years ago. Again, a very popular Sunday newspaper supplement, kind of light, fun, facty stuff. They had Marilyn Vos Savant, the world's smartest person. So I was always the second smartest columnist. They wanted me to write a trivia column, but all they had was the name Kennections, which I thought had a very unpleasant ring. Like I was not in love with it.
You famously do not like this name.
But the more I thought about it, I was like, well, they can't fire me, right? I mean, who would you... If Ken Burns had a really bad career downturn, I guess that's the only danger.
Yeah. But if your name's on the puzzle, it's your puzzle.
Apparently. And they didn't even have a format. The idea they had been a little too complicated. And so I suggested just a very simple trivia quiz where you would have to answer 5 questions and then you would have to figure out what the 5 answers had in common. So at the same time, you're trying to recall these 5 facts. Jeopardy style, or I guess Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style. You're also trying to figure out there's a larger puzzle to solve, a kind of a riddle of the Sphinx.
We have an example. We actually have been playing this as a team a lot. And so here's one puzzle that we played recently, just the beginning of it.
All right. 156. What 2013 song made Lorde the first New Zealand artist? There we go.
Hell yeah.
There we go.
We got so excited about getting the first answer. So this puzzle goes on, and all of the answers to the trivia questions have to do with baseball teams. And eventually you start to realize, oh, Royals, you know, the next question is, what animals are Asia's largest carnivores? Tigers. And at that point you start to get the theme, and then you start to kind of
Midwestern baseball teams.
roll with it. There we go. And Mike, you know, impression of this is that it's both, you need trivia knowledge because you need the basic ability to answer factual questions, but then you also need that, what you call lateral thinking. Can you talk to me about why you're drawn to this type of game?
Well, factual recall is fine. I guess the host of Jeopardy should not be against factual recall.
It's vital, yeah.
It's vital, but it's not real. The things we know about the world help inform our decisions and make us into more social people, better conversationalists. It's good to know stuff. But I think a lot of the actual cognition that happens in the world, the real problem solving we have to do, the big leaps forward in creativity or even in science, are often a little more outside the box. You're not just recalling past information. You're trying to apply it or connect it or in a new way. And
if all you needed is trivia in this world, I think you'd be president, Ken Jennings.
And think how bad that would be for me. I don't want to be president.
Well, agree to disagree, but yeah, sure.
So the fact that you're solving these trivia questions, but at the same time you're like tigers. So like what's they have stripes. What are movies with tigers? You're trying to figure out things like that. And sometimes there's like narrative or a joke. I like Jeopardy where as you're solving the clue, you're almost doing a little bit of psychoanalysis of whoever's writing the clue. This wasn't from ChatGPT. It didn't come down from a mountain on a tablet. Some human mind had to think up this puzzle for you to solve. And so there's a personality there. What did they leave out? What did they include? There's all kinds of creative choices. You're almost doing literary analysis when you solve a puzzle. And I always liked that.
You've said, and you wrote in the introduction here, that trivia almost breaks your brain and it changes the way you interact with the world. Can you explain what you mean by that?
I guess at its most benign, it just means you're a more curious person, an actively curious person. I think many of people have the tendency when they hear a fact they don't know, it unnerves them. They shut down. They don't want to know more. Whereas...
Is that fear, do you think?
I think it is. You don't want to look dumb.
Fear of shame.
Yeah, like why is he mentioning this city in Idaho that I've never heard of? I'm not going to ask. I don't want to reveal that I've never heard of this place or that school or this field or whatever it is. But I'm the other way. Like I'm like it's like I see something glittering there. I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. Like I'm a treasure hunter. Like tell me more. Like what does that mean? Like what do you do in that job? Or like where is that school? And it's the same thing if I'm online. I'll go down rabbit holes. I'll pause a podcast to look up something that happened 200 years ago. I think it's just people who are omnivorous about knowledge like that, I think they find the world a more delightful place to live.
You've written about this too. You've written so many books like about geography, and there's a whole kids series for curious kids about different facts and different dinosaurs and all sorts of stuff. And then you've written about sort of the Snopes of parenting, like the things that we say to kids that are actually not true.
May or may not be true.
Yeah, like you can actually eat a couple apple seeds. It's okay. You're not going to die, which I did not. Honestly, that was one I had held on to, Ken. I had held on to that one.
You can sit as close to the TV as you like. I give you permission.
Yeah. But, all of that, the through line is curiosity for you. Do you think somebody is born curious? Can they learn curiosity? Can we learn more and better kinds of curiosity in our everyday life?
The people, from my own experience as that kind of a kid, I think we know kids like that just carrying around the Guinness Book of World Records and fascinated with weird facts. The kid from Jerry Maguire, like that's the archetype. And that's a real thing. So I do think some people might come out of the womb like that, and I'm probably one of them. But that said, I think we see plenty of self-made people on Jeopardy too. People who, without that kind of childhood, just realized that the world was more interesting if you were curious about it, and if you followed those rabbit holes wherever they would lead, and if you were fascinated instead of alienated by things you don't know. And your memory just works better if it's something you love. If you specialize, if you say, well, I like baseball but not basketball, or I like rock but not jazz, then it's easy to remember the one and not the other. You never have a hard time remembering the words of a song you like, right? Stuff that we love just sticks. And if you're interested in everything, the miracle that happens is everything sticks. And you kind of become one of these Jeopardy savants in time, I think.
You grew up on Jeopardy. I know you did like college trivia bowl, things like that. You've always been a trivia person. you've said that you interact with the world, as we were just discussing, a little differently. Like you just go after like a honey badger after like facts.
Right.
Does that change when you become the trivia host and you become the author of a trivia book, like the Complete Kennections, 5,000 questions and 1,000 puzzles? Like, does the position of contestant versus host and writer of questions change the way you interact with the world?
The pressure is certainly less. I do like that Jeopardy now gives me the correct responses on a big piece of paper. It really makes me look smart, that I always can say, oh, no, you were thinking of Henry VI, but this is Henry VII.
If they didn't, what percentage of those questions would you know anyway?
I'm not as good as I was.
Really?
Yeah, I was still in my 20s when I was on Jeopardy. I had that
Wow.
young person brain. And it's been over 2 decades now, and I can feel myself slowing down a bit. I think I would still be a passable Jeopardy player. I might win if I had some of the breaks, but it's very nice to have all the answers. But it does professionalize it a bit in that now when I hear something interesting, immediately I'm like, ooh, can I use that I've got a new Kennections quiz due for Mental Floss this week. Like, can I use that? Or, should I pass that along to the Jeopardy writers? Would that work as a category or a daily double or a final? So I'm thinking about it from the other side of the curtain now.
And you do pass things along. Like, are you part of at all the creative process of making the questions?
I'm a very small part. Like, we have an Emmy-winning staff who is amazing at this. They produce, you would not believe how much material Jeopardy eats. It's 61 clues you see every night, plus the ones you don't see, like the spares, the ones that got tossed, the ones that didn't pass through the rigorous research test. There's maybe 100 questions a day that staff has to kick out. And they don't need me. But Alex would occasionally, if he had an idea, he would pass it along. If he was on vacation and saw a painting or a memorial and had an idea, he would tell the writers. And so I do the same thing. I have in the Notes app on my phone, I have a list of things that have occurred to me that maybe would work as a Jeopardy clue. And occasionally I'll send them into the writers. And even more occasionally, they'll humor me and put one on the show.
Pat you on the head and
Good
say,
job,
okay,
Ken.
wow.
Nice try.
Can you talk to me about the role of trivia in our society? I mean, I think one of the accessible ways that people interact with trivia might be bar trivia, for example. And I'm looking at our producer, Jason Megatron Burrows, in the other room here. He is a great bar trivia host.
Ah.
And it's something that I see brings community together. It brings just joy to people's lives. What do you think about, obviously, the playing Jeopardy and College Trivia Bowl, and these are other levels of interaction, but what do you think about the role of this in society today and how important it is?
Yeah, if I could puncture any myth about trivia, it would be that it exists to make somebody feel better about themselves than somebody else, or to make you feel bad when you miss one. In general, trivia should bring people together because despite the name, it's not usually trivial. It's usually stuff that we collectively know as a culture. It's general knowledge, it's cultural literacy. Before the age of specialization, this was the kind of thing that united us as a culture. And I like to think it has the potential to do it again. Jeopardy in particular is a place where every night for half an hour, facts matter. You can't ring into a clue about the moon landing and say, what is the moon landing was fake, Ken? There's no alternative facts on Jeopardy. And it's popular, despite that, with young and old, red states and blue. It's kind of this nationally agreed arena where on some level we're all like, yeah, you know what, actually, there are right answers and wrong answers to history and science and all the rest. And that's a very reassuring foundation in troubled times, that maybe someday we could get back to that bedrock of agreement.
We got to take just a short break. You are listening to Soundside. I'm here with Ken Jennings, host of Jeopardy and author of the new book, The Complete Kennections, 5,000 Questions in 1,000 Puzzles. We'll be right back in just a minute. Stick with us. Back with more Soundside, I'm Libby Denkman, and I'm joined by Jeopardy host, author, and Seattle resident Ken Jennings. His latest book is The Complete Kennections, 5,000 Questions in 1,000 Puzzles. And you've written about artificial intelligence and that you have some concerns about how AI is going to affect our world and the facts that we rely on. Obviously ChatGPT use has exploded in recent years. If you are wondering about how to make these lateral connections. Trivia obviously has been easy to Google for a long time, but still something that's kept people's attention. But now even the lateral connections are being made with ChatGPT and other, chatbots. What are your thoughts about the ways we might see this world change, the world of trivia and the world of like fact-based information change?
I've been thinking about this ever since, I think it was over 15 years ago now that I was on the Jeopardy IBM Watson challenge, like kind of an early knowing things algorithm, pretty primitive compared to ChatGPT, but it could do natural language
I tuned
processing.
in for that. That was a big deal.
It could do question answering, and it was better than a human. It could buzz faster than me and Brad, the other human player, and it won in won handily. And at that moment, I remember thinking, this is really demoralizing, that knowing stuff was the one thing that I thought made us special and human. And it turns out IBM just hadn't thrown enough money at that problem yet. What happens to a society where people think, oh, why would I bother knowing that? I'll just ask my device. And I think we're starting to see that happen. What I did not predict was that the answers would often be bad, that the chatbots would be confidently wrong about things pretty regularly.
Hallucinating things.
Yeah, they would just make up things that didn't exist. You'd ask it to write a legal brief and it would just invent case law. Or you'd ask it to recommend you some books and it would invent titles that don't exist. So now we have this thing that I'm already worried about the effects of it on our society, and it's not actually good at everything we assume it's good at. I don't want to say I'm an AI abolitionist, but I'm a skeptic as for a lot of applications.
I'm almost worried because it seems to be so good at certain things. And then how much does that, become something that people rely on, and then they don't realize how much of the factual information or the citations end up being hallucinations. And it's like there's a inconsistency in AI's performance, and that introduces all of these factual inaccuracies maybe into our everyday lives.
We assume it'll be wrong the way a fellow human will be wrong because it's such a convincing simulation of interacting with another person. So we're very surprised when it does things no human would do, which is just confidently invent an untruth, which to it sounds plausible. That's all it's doing is kind of being a very advanced autocorrect, telling you a plausible sequence of words without doing a whole lot of fact-checking the way a human layer of expertise would. We do not want to say that human expertise is obsolete. I think that would pretty much doom us, not just as a nation, but as a species.
And you're a former programmer. I mean, you're a former computer
this
engineer.
Is all my fault.
You're not like a Luddite. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of find there to be two paths, and most of the programmers I know are sort of cautiously optimistic. Some of them are doomers. I don't know where you fall. Like, is it Skynet, or is it the escalation of the human civilization to a new plane?
I just think there's so many ways it could doom us without being Skynet. Like the labor knock-on effects alone, might be enough to destabilize a government or a society. The wrong answers in the wrong place could literally be life and death. We all read the story about how chatbots can turn people who are mentally on the edge into full-on psychotics. Not something anybody predicted in 100 years of dystopian science fiction. We're discovering new dangerous things that AI can do every week.
I want to ask a couple personal questions, if that's okay. Just
Sure.
Pivoting from the dystopia. One is
let's lighten things up a bit.
One is that, obviously you're taping in LA a lot, but you are from the Seattle area. You live in Edmonds. Why do you stay in the Pacific Northwest now that you are the big celebrity Ken Jennings, host of Jeopardy and author of the Complete Kennections?
For one thing, it is a very limited kind of fame. It's a pleasantly limited fame where to a small group of people, they're always going to be happy to see you because they love Jeopardy. Nobody hates Jeopardy. I don't live in Edmonds. I was born there, but
I'm sorry.
But I've lived in
let's keep where you live secret then. My bad.
Well, I'm not trying to like undox myself. I just feel bad. It's stolen valor because Edmonds is great.
It is. Yeah.
And they have
if
rich
it's an
thieves.
Edmonds kind of day.
It is an Edmonds kind of day.
I was thinking you and Rick run into each other all the time, but no, I'm wrong. Okay, great.
I'm not sure I've ever seen Rick in Edmonds. We both did some promotion, some PSAs for community transit buses because we're both big transit nerds. But Edmonds does seem to generate a very pleasant NPR-y kind of celebrity, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. Maybe that's why I made an assumption there.
You're so Edmonds coded, Ken.
Okay, can I say about your level of celebrity? I saw you at Bulldog News. I believe I did, at least a while back.
Yeah.
Did you go to Bulldog News a little bit ago?
Yeah. I was there maybe a month ago.
I saw you there. I was in there because we work on the Ave, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody else in the place. After you left, I didn't want to, I don't know, I just didn't want to come up and say hello because it's Seattle and I was non-confrontational.
That's not a very Seattle thing to do.
But I asked everybody in there, I was like, did you guys see Ken Jennings? And half the people were like, yeah, I'm so excited. And then half the people were like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Who that is.
And I when you said my level of celebrity is a certain level, I was like, yep, that's actually kind of ideal, it seems like.
It's pretty great. And Seattle, we love. I'm, again, born and raised here. I think moving to LA would probably be a non-starter for me, much though I love Jeopardy. If they were like, sorry, Ken, you have to commute from Studio City like Alex did, I would be like, oh, sorry, no. I'm a lifer here.
I want to ask about something that you've talked a little bit publicly about, and that is your faith. You are a member of the LDS Church. You've said that in the past, some of your winnings, you tithe, you practice tithing. But I think that sometimes people make an assumption that you can't both be like a brainiac and a religious person or a spiritual person. Can you talk to me about the roles of religion in your life?
Yeah, I think it's certainly very easy to stereotype. Religious people are probably have a certain political ideology. They're probably not that bright. They're from this part of the country and not that. But that's a pretty broad brush. I mean, there's many different religious traditions, many famously progressive, many not so much, even within more conservative traditions. For example, if you go to a Mormon congregation in Seattle, it's just going to feel very different than going to a Mormon congregation from a small town in Arizona or Wyoming, because America self-selects now for who likes big coastal cities and who doesn't. So I'm very lucky that I attend like a lovely, fairly progressive, diverse, open-minded congregation here with great people. I just feel like a religious background has made me a better person, and for whatever reason, like it's part of my heritage. And I don't know which faith tradition I would choose today if I was just a blank slate spinning a wheel. But at this point, I feel like I have a real wellspring of familiarity and foundation with the way I was raised that like continues to make me happier today. And again, just kind of a daily reminder of what kind of person to be. And I do think that's something that the public sphere has started to lose. And obviously not all churches are a cure for that. But in my case, it's been a really great fit. Like it's been a blessing in my life.
You wrote a book about the afterlife, about a tour through different types of afterlives.
Like a cultural study of Dante's Inferno and The Good Place. And I've always loved that when TV shows go to the afterlife.
Did having like a religious background fuel your interest in that?
I guess. Like the main thing I'm a person of faith, which means I would really love for this stuff to be true. It's a very hopeful ending. As a writer, you don't want the narrative of life to just suddenly stop. You would like there to be some payoff, some resolution. And so I've always been a very hopeful person that there is another world, even though really there's no evidence for it. And it's kind of hard to make an objective argument for an afterlife. And yet we all, on some level, I think, want that. And that fascination means it looks different in different cultural traditions. It's looked different at different times in history. In an era before luxury, the afterlife was basically just a place with no famine. Like that was the best thing they could imagine. There's no famine here.
You can eat when you want.
Exactly. Like in ancient Sumeria, that's as good as it gets. It's only later that people are like, well, there must be jewels. There must be, all the fancy things. There must be gardens and harems and all the rest. So it changes through history, and it's a very interesting peek into like how anthropologically, societies have developed.
I'm talking with Ken Jennings. He is the author of many books, fascinating books, like we just touched on this book about the afterlife, a tour through different afterlives in myth and religious tradition. His most recent book is The Complete Kennections, Kennections, 5,000 questions in 1,000 puzzles. My team at Soundside has already been chewing through this book just as like a team building exercise. It's super fun. I can imagine people having it on road trips and everything like that this summer. Really quick before we go, Ken, I want to ask you some Jeopardy specific questions, if that's cool. When you are a host nowadays and a new set of contestants comes in, you have the returning champion and then you have the new set of folks. How soon when a game starts do you say, oh, that person is going to crush or that person's going to struggle? Like, can you identify somebody who's going to be good at this game really fast? And what are kind of the markers of a good player?
One thing I've learned since coming aboard is that we are imperfect talent scouts at Jeopardy. You have to solve a very hard test to get on the show. And I always thought that meant we knew who the good prospects were. And in fact, it's very hard to say who will actually, some people perform better in that high pressure situation with the lights and the cameras and the audience and the host. Other people who were great on a written test, they kind of get overwhelmed in that because it is overwhelming. It's not the relaxing. Jeopardy is relaxing comfort food, I think, for viewers. It is not relaxing comfort food for players. Like, that's a very
being on a TV set is stressful. The lights and all of the spatial organization of the place. It's unusual. It's unlike any other setting. And so I can imagine people freeze.
Yeah, Jeopardy moves so fast. You're playing against people are very smart. This has been a lifelong dream for you, but here you are. And what if I don't know them and what's going to happen? And there's so much that's out of your control, elements of luck in the game. I understand those big feelings. And I come out, I try to talk players down, honestly, when I see them every morning. I say, listen, Alex did not do this. He liked to be revealed at the top of every show. That was the first time you would see him.
Coming down from on high.
But I want to, not for that reason, but I think just, he liked the big intro. Whereas I really want to say, hey, look, I'm on your side here. I understand. I remember how this feels, but I'm going to get you through this. We're going to do great. It's actually going to be fun when you look back on this, believe it or not. And can I tell who's going to be good? Sometimes it's misleading. Sometimes somebody will have just this amazing round or an amazing first game. And you think, wow, I've never seen anybody like that before. This person could be on for months. And then it turns out they just got the right mix of categories, for example, or a daily double went their way or something. And then we've had second chance players who did not win their first game. We now have them back on in a special competition. And some of them turn out to be all-timers who then make the finals of the Tournament of Champions. And they, through a series of improbable things, lost their first game. It's an unforgiving format, Jeopardy, and I'm glad we have that second chance now.
I know that you've said in the past that you've retired from playing Jeopardy as the host now. There's been a role reversal. Do you miss it? And does the occasional Who Wants to Be a Millionaire star turn feed that void? I
loved game shows so much as a kid. Like, big part of my childhood. You get to stay home from school and watch game shows. It's a very warm feeling for me. And so when I do get asked, hey, you want to go on Millionaire? Do you want to go on Pyramid? I'm always like, I get to go on. Sure, I'll do that. But the fact is, I'm not as strong a Jeopardy player as I was back in the day. I was lucky and retired at the right time. I got away with a win in that GOAT tournament. And now I get all the fun of still going back to Jeopardy, hanging out, seeing everybody. And I don't have that heart in my throat moment of what is going to happen in this game. What is going to happen in the next game? Because the longer you win, it really is Russian roulette. You're like, is this the game that has my name on it? You don't know. It's stressful. I really am enjoying hosting. It's Jeopardy was a big part of my childhood. It's always been my favorite show, and now I feel like the kid that won the Chocolate Factory. I'm very lucky.
You keep saying you've lost a step. Does Ken Jennings do Sudoku to train his mind, or what do you do to train your mind?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like as you're getting older, because I notice I can't even remember what we did last week on the show, let alone any set of facts.
That's what happens to me now. It's like, where did we have dinner last weekend? And my wife and I will just kind of sit and think like it's a mystery. Who will ever?
I got nothing.
Who can solve this?
Yeah.
I don't know. I do a lot of the New York Times games. Like I have Spelling Bee up on my phone right now. I'm always trying to get the perfect Spelling Bee score. The elusive Queen Bee, but I'm not there today, Libby. I'm still at Genius.
Wow. So relatable, man of the people.
That's right. I'm not out here doing Wordle, but I do Spelling Bee.
Well, I had so much fun with the game. What are your hopes for somebody kind of, you've called it a chonky book. It is a chonky book. It's big. 1,000 puzzles. Before we go, what are your hopes for people who are playing Kennections for the first time, didn't pick it up in the parade days?
My hope with trivia is always that you'll be surprised at how much you actually know. And these are hard quizzes. I've been doing these at book signings, and they do sometimes play hard, like because we need to figure out who the best players in the room are. But with a hard quiz like this, you should feel good when something in your head, some fact in your brain actually pays off. Because think about that. Like, that might have been something you heard in third grade, some fact about butterfly cocoons or chrysalises or whatever, and then it just sat there for decades. And then you're doing one of these dumb trivia quizzes, and suddenly, butterfly chrysalises, it's coming in handy for the first time. And that's a very validating feeling, to have something in our brains actually help us and matter in real life. That's the gift of trivia.
Ken Jennings' new book is The Complete Kennections, 5,000 questions and 1,000 puzzles. Ken Jennings, thank you so much for being on Soundside. I really appreciate it.
It was fun. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. By the way, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.